Where Russ goes, guys usually lose their jobs. NBA analyst takes massive shot Russell Westbrook after Mike Malone's firing. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone is having a nice day. Before we begin the video, please subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. NBA analyst Nick Wright took shots at Denver Nuggets star Russell Westbrook on Tuesday after the Nuggets shockingly fired Michael Malone as their head coach. While discussing Malone's firing with Kevin Wildes and Chris Broussard, Wright discussed Westbrook's role in the situation in Denver. Wright seemingly alluded to himself as someone who warned people of the following: explore the NBA Draft 2024 with our free NBA mock draft simulator and be the GM of your favorite NBA team. Wright's claims are backed up by facts. In 3 of Westbrook's previous 4 stops before Denver, Houston, Washington, Lakers, the team's head coach, Mike D'Antoni, Scott Brooks, Frank Vogel, either quit or was fired around a year after Westbrook's arrival. Now, Mike Malone has been added to the list. However, it remains to be seen exactly how much responsibility, if any, Russell Westbrook should have on these departures. Russell Westbrook is having a somewhat resurgent season as a 6th man for the Nuggets. He is averaging 13.3 points, 5.0 rebounds, and 6.2 assists in 28.1 minutes in his debut season in Denver. Michael Malone and Nuggets GM clashed over Russell Westbrook before firing. Michael Malone and GM Calvin Booth had their share of disagreements, according to a report from The Athletic, shortly after they both got fired. One of those disagreements surrounded Russell Westbrook. Malone believed in Russ and wanted to run certain plays around the star guard. However, Booth felt otherwise and demanded to see less of Westbrook in the rotation in favor of the team's younger players. Russell Westbrook committed some crucial errors in last week's double overtime game against the Minnesota Timberwolves last Tuesday. He missed an open layup to potentially seal the game. He then committed a foul on a 3-point game-winning attempt, which ultimately resulted in their defeat. Michael Malone defended Russ and told Calvin Booth that he'd still be heavily utilized in the rotation. The Nuggets then proceeded to suffer 4 consecutive losses, which ultimately led to the organization pulling the plug on both Malone and Booth. Idil Estudillo is an NBA journalist at Sportskeeda. He played for his basketball teams during elementary and high school. With strong sports writing and journalism skills, Idil excels in crafting engaging narratives and staying updated with the latest NBA news and trends. He enjoys fact-checking, helping with research, and being a fresh set of eyes on fellow writers' articles. In the world of the NBA, where the spotlight is on both the players and the coaches, a lot can happen in a single season. Trades, coaching changes, and even the occasional fallout between star players and their teams can all result in high-stakes drama. But few narratives in the modern NBA have been as captivating or as contentious as the one involving Russell Westbrook. Known for his fierce competitiveness, explosive athleticism, and unparalleled energy, Westbrook has become a polarizing figure in basketball, not just for his performances on the court, but for the ripple effects his presence tends to have on the teams he plays for. Recently, this storyline took another sharp turn after NBA analyst and former coach Stan Van Gundy took a massive shot at Russell Westbrook following the firing of Mike Malone, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Van Gundy's comment, "Where Russ goes, guys usually lose their jobs," was not just a casual remark, but a reflection of deeper tensions within the league. It highlighted the significant impact that Russell Westbrook's controversial reputation can have on a team's fortunes, not only in terms of wins and losses, but also in the overall stability of the organization. This article will dive into the history behind Van Gundy's comment, examine the tension between Westbrook and various teams and coaching staffs, and explore the larger implications of such criticisms for both the future of Russell Westbrook and the teams he may play for. The fallout from Westbrook's impact. To understand the gravity of Van Gundy's comment, it's important to first understand the trajectory of Russell Westbrook's career and his relationship with the teams he has been a part of. Westbrook's career has been defined by highs and lows, marked by MVP awards, triple-doubles, and numerous playoff appearances. However, his intense playing style and high basketball IQ have also made him a controversial figure. Over time, as Westbrook's skill set has evolved, so too have concerns about his fit with other star players and coaching systems. The statement, "Where Russ goes, guys usually lose their jobs," suggests that Westbrook has a pattern of creating tension within organizations, leading to instability and sometimes even coaching changes. This comment alludes to a trend where franchises, particularly those with significant investment in him, face the potential for disruption, not just on the floor, but within the coaching structure as well. Take, for instance, his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Westbrook spent the majority of his career there, alongside Kevin Durant, and then later with Paul George. While he earned the 2017 MVP award and solidified himself as one of the most dynamic point guards of his era, the team was repeatedly unable to make a deep playoff run. After Durant's departure in 2016, the Thunder organization entered a rebuilding phase with Westbrook as the centerpiece. However, despite his individual accomplishments, the team's inability to break through in the playoffs eventually led to questions about the long-term success of the franchise with Westbrook as the centerpiece. This question culminated in the hiring of Billy Donovan as head coach in 2015, a decision that was seen as an attempt to balance Westbrook's raw energy with a more strategic, disciplined approach to the game. However, tensions quickly arose between Donovan and Westbrook. While Donovan worked to create a more structured offense, Westbrook's free-flowing, high-velocity style often led to clashes in philosophy. The Thunder's performance fluctuated, and while Donovan was given time to implement his ideas, the continued playoff disappointments led to his eventual departure in 2020 after the team decided to enter a full rebuild phase. The impact of Westbrook's trade to the Houston Rockets. Westbrook's trade to the Houston Rockets in 2019 marked another pivotal point in his career. He was reunited with former Thunder teammate James Harden, and the expectations were high. However, Westbrook's time in Houston was characterized by challenges that further cemented his reputation as a disruptive force within a team dynamic. The Rockets, under head coach Mike D'Antoni, had built their offense around the small ball philosophy, relying heavily on perimeter shooting and spacing. While Westbrook's athleticism and ability to drive to the basket were assets, his inability to adapt to a shooting-heavy system created tension. Houston's desire to have Westbrook operate as a secondary ball handler next to Harden clashed with Westbrook's tendency to dominate the ball. Additionally, his high turnover rate and reluctance to adjust to a shooting-heavy offense created a strain on both the coaching staff and the players. In the aftermath of a disappointing playoff exit, Mike D'Antoni left the Rockets, and while the team's struggles were attributed to various factors, it was hard to ignore that Westbrook's style of play and his relationship with the coaching staff were contributing issues. This situation again raised questions about whether Westbrook's presence was causing instability, and in this case, it led to the departure of a coach who had been with the franchise for several years. Westbrook's time with the Los Angeles Lakers, the coach killer narrative. Perhaps the most telling example of the coach killer narrative surrounding Westbrook came during his brief, tumultuous time with the Los Angeles Lakers. When Westbrook was traded to the Lakers in 2021, the team was coming off an NBA championship and had LeBron James and Anthony Davis in place as their core. The addition of Westbrook was seen as a move to bolster the team's chances of winning another title, as the Lakers sought to complement their star duo with a dynamic playmaker. However, as the season unfolded, it quickly became clear that Westbrook's fit with the Lakers was problematic. On the court, Westbrook's ball-dominant style did not mesh well with LeBron James, who also thrived with the ball in his hands. His erratic shooting and high turnover rate were exacerbated in a Lakers offense that struggled with consistency. The team's chemistry was visibly off, and as the season progressed, questions began to emerge about whether Westbrook's playing style was holding the team back. The situation reached a breaking point when Lakers head coach Frank Vogel, despite his success with the team in previous seasons, found himself under pressure. Vogel was frequently criticized for his inability to incorporate Westbrook into the team's offense, and many began to wonder if the team would ever regain its rhythm with the former MVP in the fold. In a year filled with drama, injuries, and underperformance, Vogel was ultimately let go, despite leading the team to an NBA championship just 2 years earlier. It was here, in the wake of Vogel's firing, that NBA analysts like Stan Van Gundy began making pointed remarks about Westbrook's role in these coaching changes. Van Gundy's statement about coaches losing their jobs when Westbrook is involved was not just a casual remark, but a pointed critique of the inherent tension Westbrook creates in a team dynamic. While it may be unfair to place the blame solely on Westbrook, his presence in Los Angeles seemed to contribute to the larger dysfunction that ultimately led to Vogel's departure. The firing of Mike Malone, a symptom of larger issues. Mike Malone's firing from the Denver Nuggets, a team he had led to the Western Conference Finals and multiple playoff appearances, came as a surprise to many in the basketball world. However, the firing itself may have been symptomatic of the larger issues at play within the NBA. Issues that have repeatedly reared their heads in relation to Russell Westbrook. In the case of Malone, the firing was widely seen as a response to the Nuggets' failure to progress past the early rounds of the playoffs in recent seasons. Despite having one of the most talented teams in the league, led by MVP candidate Nikola Jokic, the Nuggets had not been able to consistently compete for championships. Some critics pointed to Malone's inability to fully integrate his players into a coherent playoff strategy, while others saw the firing as part of a larger reshuffling within the franchise. For Van Gundy to make a comment like, "Where Russ goes, guys usually lose their jobs," in the aftermath of Malone's firing was significant. It suggested that Malone's departure, like the exits of other coaches, might have been part of a larger trend in which Russell Westbrook's presence on a team might contribute to instability, whether directly or indirectly. Given Westbrook's history with coaches like Billy Donovan, Mike D'Antoni, and Frank Vogel, this comment had some weight, even if it was an oversimplification of the broader dynamics at play. The future of Westbrook and the coach killer label. Looking forward, it is unclear what the future holds for Russell Westbrook in the NBA. While his athleticism and competitive fire are undeniable, the criticism he has faced over the years regarding his fit within team systems and his relationship with coaching staffs will likely follow him throughout his career. Whether he ultimately embraces a more defined role on a team or remains a high-usage star whose style clashes with coaching strategies will determine how long he can remain in the league. For NBA teams, the question may not just be about how Westbrook performs on the floor, but about the impact he has on team chemistry and the stability of the coaching staff. As Van Gundy's remark suggests, when Westbrook is involved, there's always the possibility of disruption, and sometimes that disruption can cost coaches their jobs. Ultimately, this narrative of Russell Westbrook being a coach killer or a destabilizing force in the locker room is one that will likely continue to define his legacy. While it may be unfair to place all the blame on him for the shortcomings of entire organizations, the pattern is undeniable. And until Westbrook can find a way to alter this perception, whether by adapting his game or finding a team where his style truly fits, he may continue to be seen as a high-risk, high-reward player, one whose presence can change the fate of a coach as easily as it can elevate a team's success. Van Gundy's comment about Westbrook and the coaching changes he has been associated with is a reflection of something deeper within the NBA, the delicate balance between player power and organizational stability. The NBA is increasingly a players' league, where superstar athletes have tremendous influence not just on game strategy, but on decisions regarding coaches, front office personnel, and even team culture. In this environment, Westbrook's stature as a former MVP and one of the most dynamic players in modern NBA history means that he wields significant influence wherever he plays. However, with great power comes great responsibility, and the fallout from some of his previous stops suggests that being a superstar in today's league requires not just talent, but a willingness to buy into team systems and work collaboratively with coaches and fellow players. Westbrook's fiery persona and his high energy, all-out style of play are both assets and liabilities. When it works, such as during his MVP season or his early years in Oklahoma City, he is a force of nature, capable of dominating a game and carrying a team to new heights. However, when things don't go according to plan, his unrelenting style can lead to friction with coaches, teammates, and even front office staff. This friction, as evidenced by the firing of coaches like Billy Donovan, Mike D'Antoni, and Frank Vogel, suggests that Westbrook's style is at odds with the expectations of coaching staffs that prioritize a certain level of discipline, ball movement, and team-oriented play. For NBA analysts and coaches like Stan Van Gundy, these issues are glaring. They see the pattern. Whenever Westbrook enters a team's ecosystem, something inevitably gives. Whether it's the coaching staff, the team chemistry, or the system itself, something ends up breaking. And as Van Gundy's sharp remark implies, the person who is most likely to lose their job in these situations is the coach, who often bears the brunt of any perceived underachievement, regardless of how much of that underachievement can be linked to player dynamics. This scenario highlights the challenge faced by many NBA coaches, managing a superstar like Westbrook, whose talents are undeniable but whose influence can be destabilizing. When a team invests so much in a player with such an outsized personality and playing style, the risks are high. If the player cannot adjust or compromise, the coach becomes the scapegoat when things go wrong. It's not just a problem for coaches like Vogel, who were thrust into the spotlight during Westbrook's tumultuous tenure in Los Angeles, but also for other coaches who may find themselves in similar situations with other high-profile players. Russell Westbrook's future in the NBA: adapt or fade? The big question, of course, is what's next for Russell Westbrook. As the years pass and his time in the NBA advances, the 2017 MVP's career trajectory has started to shift from being a franchise cornerstone to potentially playing a supporting role. This transition is not unique to Westbrook, but is rather a natural course for players who once dominated the league, but whose skill sets begin to age, evolve, or lose their effectiveness in a changing game. The NBA has shifted towards a more perimeter-oriented game, and while Westbrook's athleticism is still elite, his inability to consistently shoot from distance and his style of play have become less effective in the modern NBA. Westbrook's future in the NBA could hinge on his ability to adapt. For a player like him, who has been accustomed to having the ball in his hands and playing a high-usage role, adapting to a more secondary role may prove to be challenging. A more disciplined, team-first approach would require him to shift away from the ball-dominant style he has built his entire career around. It would mean becoming a better shooter, improving his off-the-ball movement, and perhaps accepting less control over offensive possessions. Whether or not Westbrook is willing to make those adjustments could determine whether he remains an asset in the league or falls victim to the very criticisms Van Gundy outlined. That being said, there is still hope for Westbrook. Despite his struggles in recent years, he has shown flashes of brilliance. His time with the Los Angeles Lakers, though rocky, wasn't without its highlights. He had moments where he showcased his playmaking ability and his defensive tenacity. The question isn't whether he can still play at a high level, but whether he can adapt his game to fit into a more structured system, one that emphasizes team play over individual achievement. The increasing reliance on advanced analytics in the NBA also complicates matters. With so much data available on player efficiency, decision-making, and shooting mechanics, Westbrook's weaknesses, his inability to shoot consistently from the outside, his turnovers, and his sometimes questionable shot selection, are more evident than ever. For coaches, especially those focused on maximizing efficiency and minimizing mistakes, Westbrook's presence on the court presents a challenge. His inability to adapt could be the difference between him staying in the NBA for a few more years or being phased out in favor of players whose skills better align with the modern game. Yet, there are teams that might be able to take advantage of what Westbrook still brings to the table. A team that needs a spark plug off the bench, someone who can provide energy and leadership in a limited role, could be the ideal landing spot for him. A coach willing to embrace his strengths while mitigating his weaknesses could find success in utilizing him as a change-of-pace player, albeit one who isn't the primary offensive option. Teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, who already have a system built around star players like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, could benefit from a Westbrook who plays a complementary role rather than a lead one. If Westbrook can embrace this role, he could still have a productive career, though it might look much different than the one he envisioned in his younger years. The lasting legacy of Russell Westbrook. Regardless of what happens next in Westbrook's career, one thing is certain: his legacy will be shaped by more than just his on-court accomplishments. While his triple-doubles, MVP award, and impressive athleticism will always be a part of his story, Westbrook's time in the league will also be marked by the questions surrounding his fit within teams. His ability to make teams better has often been called into question, and in many cases, his time on a team has coincided with high-profile coaching changes. As the NBA continues to evolve, and as more teams move toward positionless basketball and prioritize ball movement and spacing, Westbrook struggles to adapt to this new reality will only become more pronounced. The growing complexity of the NBA's offensive and defensive systems means that a player who cannot shoot consistently or fit within a structured team offense is at risk of being left behind. For all of his personal accolades, Westbrook's inability to fit seamlessly into these systems may eventually define his legacy more than his raw talent ever could. Yet, as Van Gundy's pointed remarks suggest, it would be an oversimplification to place all the blame on Westbrook. The NBA is a team sport, and while a player like Westbrook can certainly make things more difficult for coaches, the organizational issues that arise are rarely the result of one individual. The fact that multiple coaches have been fired across several teams, each with different dynamics and circumstances, suggests that the root causes of these firings go beyond any single player. In the end, Westbrook will be remembered as one of the most unique players in NBA history, a fierce competitor, a stat sheet stuffer, and a player who never took a night off. But his legacy will also carry the weight of being a cautionary tale for coaches, front offices, and even players. The price of having a superstar with a singular dominant style is that sometimes it costs the coaches and the teams who invest in them. Westbrook's journey, whether he evolves into a new role or continues to clash with coaching staffs, will undoubtedly remain one of the most fascinating storylines in the NBA. How he navigates the remainder of his career will determine whether he can rewrite his narrative or if he will be remembered as a player whose greatness was, in some ways, marred by his inability to adjust to the ever-changing landscape of the NBA.